Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian at Saab Aeronautics headquarters in Linköping, Sweden. And we have with us as our guest, or has welcomed into his offices, Ulf Nilsson, who's the head of Saab Aeronautics. Sir, thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here. So I'm looking forward to this.
In the spirit of full disclosure, Saab sponsored our trip here to Sweden to cover the 90th anniversary of the Swedish Air Force. Obviously, the big news is on the TX trainer. Saab, some years ago, about 4 years ago, teamed with U.S. aerospace giant. How many years ago was it that you guys teamed with them?
As I remember it from the top of my head, I think it was 2013 that we started the work with jointly with Boeing around this for the TX program for the next trainer in the U.S.
So it was in 2013 that you guys teamed with Boeing to develop the TX trainer. Obviously, one of the biggest trainer competition, the biggest trainer competition in the world for the U.S. Air Force. A number of companies are in it. Northrop recently unveiled their aircraft. Obviously BAE Systems is in there with the Hawk, which is one of the staple trainers. The Italians are in there, obviously, with the 346, their bid called the T100. And you guys are have been the mystery bid, right? Shrouded in secrecy. The aircraft that you guys have developed is being assembled. The prototypes are being assembled in St. Louis. The rollout's going to be on the 13th. You're keeping very tight wraps on this, but talk to us a little bit about what are the characteristics that your aircraft will have, and what is it that you think gives you an edge in this hard-fought competition?
I think one of our philosophies have, of course, been the clean sheet design to meet the requirements of the U.S. Air Force in a good way and to have a good potential in our platform. But as you know, we are being a bit secretive around the TX program, so you have to wait a bit longer until the rollout, because before we go into any details around the TX and the product as such. But it's not that far away now, so.
But obviously Northrop also did a clean sheet design. Theirs has been spotted in Mojave. They're teamed with Scaled Composites, obviously, to put that aircraft together. Are you looking at through life sustainability, the overall training system? I mean, what are some of the pieces that you're bringing to bear in this? Because there are some folks, for example, who look at the Hawk and they say, okay, well, it has certain disadvantages in terms of the other aircraft. On the other hand, it's a very evolved overall training system. What do you think some of the features, how are you bringing all of these elements together in your training solution?
Again, I won't go into any great detail around this, but of course one of the advantages doing a clean sheet design is that you can adapt to a modern thinking around training philosophy as such as well. And I think we have a really good solution here and a strong concept. So I'm going to leave it at this.
You're going to leave it at this, and we'll talk after the 13th.
We'll come back to all the good stuff and the details.
Well, let's go to the Gripen, obviously. That is the latest in a long line of aircraft, legendary aircraft that have come from this facility, going back all the way to the Tunan, the J-29, which came out of this factory as well. If memory serves correctly, and every other generation, the Lansen, the Draken, the Viggen, and the earlier version of Gripen has also come from Linköping. You guys say that the E model of the aircraft, the ENF model that you're developing, this next generation Gripen, is a fundamentally different approach to designing a fighter. Explain to us a little bit about why you think it marks such a dramatic difference from other aircraft that have been developed before.
I think one of the key things looking at this, you have to talk a bit about the pace of development around technology as such. Looking back 10-15 years, you could predict the development pace of technology. But now coming into the digital revolution, that's not the case anymore. Maybe you can predict 2-3 years, not 10-15 like you could before. And this is a big change. And then you have to have a platform that has the flexibility built into it to be able to cope with this development speed. And also it's a big change that before the pace of development of technology was setting the pace of the development of the capabilities of the fighter system. But now with the digital revolution it's changing again, because now it's our minds that is the limitation. And then again you have to have that flexibility, and I think with the next generation of the Gripen, the EF, we have a core avionics system that has a unique design. We have a flight critical part of it, and we have a tactical part of it. And this means that we can handle flight critical in the way we have to do to be able to fly safe, but when it comes to the tactical and functional side, we can have a more of an app development approach. And then we can develop an app, and then we can plug it in because we control the interface. And we have an operational system that controls the overall avionics system. And I think this is one of the major leaps forward when it comes to thinking and designing that we have built into the new Gripen. And this means that we have the flexibility over time to be able to adapt to the new requirements, because of course the threat scenario will develop in the same pace as the technology and the big data makes functionality available. Every 2-3 years new things will happen, and you will have to be able to adapt. So you have to be able to adapt in steps. You can't wait for 10 years with a midlife upgrade anymore. And that's a big change. That's a revolution of thinking, I think. And here we are in a position that I believe is quite unique.
And from an architectural standpoint, what are some of the decisions you had to make early in developing the architecture of the program to allow that sort of modularity going forward?
I think this goes back also to the thinking in Sweden and the way we work closely with our FMV, the Bureau of Acquisition in Sweden, and the Air Force that will put up the requirements, of course, that we have to meet. We work very closely in teams. We're a small country. We have to be innovative to be able to be successful. And where we live, in our part on the little corner of the world, with the threats we have around, we have to have a performance that is world class. And to achieve that, we have to work with innovation. We'll never have this advantage of scale and so on. So we have to come up with other ways of thinking. This has always been driving us to think in a different way. And when we sat down with the Gripen, we had to come up with something that was even more cost efficient than the Gripen today. And this was really what was driving us, and to handle the software in a different way, to be more efficient, more flexible. This was a design requirement from day one. And that's also a crucial thing, that you have to have it in your DNA, so to speak, to be able to do it and be efficient in this way and be cost efficient moving forward. So it's a culture, and it's our DNA from Saab, actually, that's driving this.
One of the big changes that you mentioned when we spoke a short while ago was something that everybody is struggling with, that commercial technology cycles really are driving this,
Yep.
right? Militaries are having to adapt
Yep.
commercial technologies and figure out how best to inject them into military
Yep.
systems. Ash Carter's, U.S. Defense Secretary Ash Carter's innovation drive is to figure out how to take advantage of these commercial innovation cycles, because his point is, you know, these same commercial technologies are available to our adversaries, and so it's the person who can adapt them more quickly. What's the key that you guys, or the philosophy you guys use to adapt commercial technology to get them into your systems? How do you figure out what is something unique that we have to invest on to develop on our own, as opposed to something that we can adapt that's commercial?
And here we have also our strategy is to be able to do the integration and be able to have control of the core, the software for the avionics system, and to be able to do the integration of the functions and the new technology that is driven by commercial development. So we don't have to do everything, but you have to be able to set the strategy, the core of the avionics, and the architecture around that, and the software, the operational system, so to speak. And that is our philosophy. And then we have partners and suppliers that we work closely with and draw on their development programs and can reuse that for our platform and plug it into our avionics system. So we don't have any hardware anymore. We don't have a firmware when it comes to buttons or anything. It's completely a software solution system today. But also when it comes to computers, there is some hardware somewhere, of course. And here again, we try to build a solution that we can reuse on a lower level, the development scheme. Then you have to put it into a different package when you do the box.
Right.
But on a subsystem level, we can draw on the development programs from our partners and suppliers and commercial development and that sort of industry.
And everything is open systems, so that's the key to being able to easily upgrade it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is one of the most important things. This also drives down cost, of course, and gives us that flexibility again to be able to adapt to new technology. And looking at the change for fighter systems, before you had a lifespan maybe 3,000 to 5,000 hours for an aircraft. Now it's 8, 12, 15 and so on, and you will run into obsolescence. And again, if you have this philosophy and you can adapt and reuse or use or draw on the development from your partners, you will avoid the obsolescence issue as well. So it's both cost and it's performance.
One of the national sovereignty points that Saab is very fond of pointing out to people is the U.S. is, for example, very, very controlling, whereas the architecture you're trying to use for this aircraft is much broader, and even saying that it's, because it is app-based, customers will be able to develop some of their own unique national capabilities, their sovereign capabilities that you won't even have access to. How does that work in a combat aircraft model where that's sort of a different approach from what many customers, many companies have used?
Yeah, and I think here we have a philosophy also to share technology in a different way. We see that that's a good way of creating partners. And again, export is crucial for us. The domestic market is so small in Sweden, we can never survive on that. We have to be successful in the export market as well. And to do that, when it comes to working with military platforms and fighter systems, there's always going to be a need for sovereignty with your customers. And I think with this sort of solution, where they can develop their apps when it comes to radar modes, electronic warfare and so on, which are areas where every country wants to have a bit of their own twist of the functionality. I think this is also a unique position here to be able to do this in a good way, in a good partnership. And I mean, we don't have to, we will never have this same sort of role to play like the US as a country from Sweden when it comes to security policies and so on. So we see more of an opportunity creating partnerships and building for the future together, finding companies and different solutions, for an example in Brazil, and then we can move forward to do joint development. That's our philosophy.
I want to talk to you in a moment about export markets for the Gripen, but one point I want to get to, which is a little bit controversial in the United States. The United States has bet very, very big, obviously, on stealth technology. The F-22 is in service. The new stealth bomber is the B-21, is going to be a stealth aircraft, and the Joint Strike Fighter is the biggest fighter program in the world. It's a very, very sophisticated aircraft. It's going into service in the United States, obviously in service with the Air Force and the Marine Corps, and the Navy is going to follow suit soon. And there are folks in the United States who challenge the claim that you guys make, that stealth is more easily defeatable. You guys have suggested that actually it's quite that you guys have figured out sort of how to counter stealth. What gives you that basis to make that statement? What is the combination of technologies that you guys are looking at that make stealth vulnerable? Because the U.S. answer is it's one thing to spot us, but it's another thing to be able to complete that whole kill chain to shoot down a stealth aircraft.
Yeah, and here it's always about the measures and countermeasures. It's always been like that in the fighter world. First the missiles, the IR missile came, and then it came countermeasures against that. It's the same thing with stealth. Now the sensors have developed both when it comes to the active sensors and the passive sensors, so you can detect stealth. That's common knowledge today, and it's not only us. It's around the world. It's that sort of situation we are in. And having the flexibility that we have with our balance design, we can adapt to this. And today we see with the AESA radars, we have the IRST, where we can track stealth. And of course, once you've found the target, you won't let go of it, and then it starts. And then you can move into this. And also with the BVR missiles, the Meteor that is operational now today.
The beyond visual range.
Yeah, beyond visual range missile that is operational in the Swedish Air Force today. You have a different situation. You can from a very far distance act on this sort of situation. And I think here we have different tactics. We're not in the first step moving into the conflict area in the same way as I have to have a strategy with the stealth aircraft. It is that you're going to have an advantage of and the element of surprise and not being detected to move in and do a strike in there. We can do it from a distance instead. But of course we have an electronic warfare system and tactics developed, so we will survive once we have to enter the conflict zone. But I think it's different ways of thinking and philosophies here. And if you go for a more of a rhomb-like stealth design, you will have limitations. Maintaining the surfaces and so on is always going to be expensive. You have to have internal weapon base. You will have limitations when it comes to flight performance in an air-to-air sort of a mission and a combat situation and so on. So that's why we prefer to have our flexibility our balance design, and with our avionics and software, we think we have more of a multi-generation aircraft in that respect. So it gives us an edge there, I think.
And your point is that the combination of more advanced radars combined with infrared systems, then that and the fusing of that data, including ground radars, air radars, and the infrared, is what will give you a targeting picture that then you can exploit.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the way we fly with our tactics, we are spread out when we come into a scenario. And it's all about keeping track of stealth. If you can detect it from different angles and different positions, you will get better and better picture of the position and what you are looking at.
Have you conducted training exercises with the U.S.? Have you managed to go over there and do tests with your U.S. counterparts?
Yes, we've been into the red flag and other such exercises, of course, but not with JSF so far. So, but I doubt they will enter with the latest technology.
It would be interesting to see if General Bogdan gives you an invitation to, because if one of your allies has figured out how to counter your technology, maybe it's a good idea to have that discussion with them sooner rather than later. And obviously, we're going to give time to the U.S. guys to counter your point, because obviously the U.S. is betting very big on that technology. But I think folks were very interested in hearing how you guys are thinking about it. Let's go to the export markets for the Gripen. As you said, it's very, very critical. Your home customer has, the Swedish Air Force now is 100 aircraft. Obviously, the chief of the Swedish Air Force is thinking about taking a little bit of a risk and reducing the size of the force. To reduce operating costs, waiting for the new generation of aircraft to come into service. You won in Switzerland. That was undone by a national referendum. I want to ask, Brazil was the launch customer. That's still your customer on that, and your partner on that. Bring us up to speed on where you are on the Brazilian side, on the program overall. But you're still confident that the Brazilian deal is on track?
Absolutely. They are really committed to the program from the Brazilian side. I mean, it's a national program. It's moving forward according to plan. And this autumn, in October, we are going to open a joint development center with Embraer and our other partners in Brazil. So, and we have about 75 engineers from Brazil here being trained in the ways and thinking around Gripen, and also the ways of working and the processes of development for the Gripen. And they are moving back, and we're of course going to support them during the autumn here. So it's moving along at a really good pace. And also the program overall for the Swedish customer, we have deliveries in 2019 that's on track, and the IOC, initial operating capability, will be there in 2023. So, and the number of aircraft, going back to that in Sweden, I mean, when they took the decision, we had one situation. And now looking around our corner of the world, so to speak, looking to the east and even to the southeast, it's a big change. And there are discussions of additional 10 aircraft in the Swedish parliament. So we will see how they will phase in and phase out different aircraft moving into the next decade here.
And when did development start for the, just for our audience to understand the speed with which this program has moved? The official go-ahead for the ENF program was when?
2012 from the Swedish customer.
2012, and it's IOCing in 2023 with deliveries in 19.
Yeah,
that's
so
not bad.
So it's also shrinking the cycles from concept until you have deliveries. I mean, this is shrinking with 30-40% with the new Gripen system as well. So we keep on pushing. And I think it's always about having that momentum and to improve, and flexibility is going to be more and more important. We can see that around us. I mean, today on your computers, on your phones, you don't keep them from that long anymore. It's the same with technology for fighter aircraft. You have to have that flexibility. It's one of the key things.
Well, obviously Switzerland was, you won it. It was unfortunately undone from your perspective by the national referendum. Do you still feel confident that you guys can come back in Switzerland?
Yeah, and the referendum was about the financial solution, how to procure the aircraft. So it's not about the fighter as such, and that's important to point out. And I think we have a really strong position. They've chosen us once. Why shouldn't they not do it again? So,
what about India?
And India, yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting market. They have been running their RRCA procurement, which they now have cancelled. They're negotiating with the French around 36 aircraft. That will probably, I think that will be finalized. But now they are looking for.
Well, that's for the nuclear mission, right? So that's the aircraft that would satisfy that part of it. But the broader acquisition has been suspended.
Yeah. And now they are thinking about how to move forward on this, and we have discussions from the Swedish government with India. Our prime ministers have met a couple of times, and there has been an announcement that there will be a collaboration around defense and aviation between Sweden and India. Of course, this is extremely interesting for Saab as a company as well. So we are listening very closely now and looking into and see where they want to move and how they want to move forward from India. But it's a huge opportunity, of course.
What are some other markets that you're looking at? I mean, on one of your slides, there was a Finnish flag, a Belgian flag, obviously an Indian flag. But what are some of the other markets where you think, and give us numbers? How many do you think you're going to ultimately export? How many, Super Gripens or ENFs are you gonna be building ultimately?
And I mean, here we see potential for all Gripens. I mean, different customers have different needs. Some have the need for range and more internal fuel. Then one platform is a solution. One have another sort of focus for their Air Force and their solution. Then maybe the CD is the good solution. So they will be running in parallel. And we see that going on for a long time as such. And you can always develop the different platforms with new functionality. But looking at the market here, I think we try to grow around our current customer base. We have a strong foothold in Central Europe. And here's a lot of things happening. With
Hungary and Czech Republic.
Hungary and Czech Republic is operational today with the Gripen. You have Slovakia, we have Croatia, and now we have Belgium and Finland and so on. So of course we try to grow a Gripen hub around this. And again, creating a partnership and sharing technology and different sort of solutions with our customer base to be able to reduce the cost of maintenance and running this sort of operational system for a long time. It's never going to be cheap, if you understand what I mean, to run an Air Force. But you have to be efficient and come up with smart solutions here to share cost. You can have a training and education in one area, you can have support in another area and so on. So this we try to focus around. And of course in Latin America, around Brazil, there's a lot of interest of the Gripen. We'll see in the next 3 to 5 years, I'm sure, new customers coming along with the Gripen systems. And then, of course, we have Thailand that's operational today. In Asia, there's a lot of things going on around there as well. We have Indonesia, we have Malaysia, and so on that is looking into the Gripen system. So we try to build the Gripen hubs around our customer base. And we see a good opportunity here selling around 350 to 400 aircraft the next 20 years. So we have a really strong window of opportunity when it comes to the marketplace with the systems we have and the development program we have today.
Do you agree with analysts who are concerned that the U.S. is pricing itself out of the market and allowing you and perhaps even the French to have an opportunity at still a very sophisticated band, but that's potentially less expensive than some of the U.S. offerings?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the cost efficiency and the performance, you always have to have the performance, otherwise the customer won't look at it. But coming up with the cost efficiency that we can offer, I think we have a really strong opportunity here. And also with the development into the flexibility, like we talked about before, with the Gripen EF. This is something that is unique and will give us a window of opportunity here for at least the next 10 years.
Last 2 questions, because I know you have to go. The first one is, what do you see as you guys do your studies looking at, as you said, looking even a few years ahead is always a challenge. As you look 10, 20, 30 years into the future, what's the combat aircraft of the future going to look like? Obviously, there are folks who are saying that's purely an unmanned future. There are others who say, actually, it's always going to be manned to a certain degree. From your guys' standpoint, given you do have a history of innovation, what do you see when you look that far into the future?
I think there are some areas that are really going to be changing the world a lot. I mean, we think it's going to be a mix between manned and unmanned for a start. It's not going to be one or the other. It's going to be different sort of mission solutions that require manned or unmanned. But also I think the development of weapons, smart weapons and solutions combined with unmanned weapons are coming more and more closely together, and how you solve that. And of course you have the situation with the autonomous decision support. Moving into that sort of threat environment in the future is going to become more and more complex with the big data and everything that's going to be available just in a couple of years. And then you have to have that flexibility to adapt your functionality and your capabilities to that. So we really have a focus on capabilities, trying to stretch our mind to see what we can achieve with technology, not trying to put it into platform yet, to predict that sort of development of capability. And another area I think that's becoming is also when it comes to cyber. We can see that already, that GPS is going to be well, maybe not the thing you can trust when it comes to navigation and so on. And there's a lot of things around this. You have to support the pilot with the autonomous decision support. I think that's one of the key things, to be able to take all that information from all the sensors on the ground, in the air, on sea and so on, process that, present it, and make sure they can act in the tactical loop and come to a quick decision. Because if you can detect your targets and come to a decision quicker and act than your enemy, then you win. So it's a lot of that.
And if you have an airplane that is as cyber dependent as all of these aircraft are going to be, do cyber defenses become a challenge, a bigger problem?
Absolutely, that's going to grow in the future. And I think there is a couple of dimensions into that. One is, of course, you have to protect your own product to be safe, and they will not be infected in software and so on. You have to be able to handle that, and that's a challenge as such. But also when it comes to offensive thinking, with the areas around this, that's also a different angle, I think.
And in terms of, and the last question is in terms of cooperation on other programs, obviously, you're working very closely with Embraer, who is going to be the lead, and is your partner on the Gripen program. Do you foresee becoming a partner on the KC-390 program at any point and seeing yourself getting into the tanker transport business as well? Boeing is also a partner on that program, and you're partnered with Boeing.
Not as it is today, but you never know what the future is holding. So we'll have to see, but that's no plans today.
And let me ask you one last question, which I should have asked you earlier about the trainer. In the event that the United States doesn't buy your TX solution, do you see going ahead with that airplane on global markets, advancing it in the Swedish market, for example? Obviously, the Saab 105s are older aircraft, and everybody recognizes the need to upgrade those. Do you see a future for this program even if the U.S. doesn't buy it?
I think it's too early to say which way you're going to go. I mean, of course, now the focus is to win in the U.S. and the U.S. Air Force. But there are opportunities around the world to do business with other customers. But it's too early. It's a too early stage today.
Sir, thanks very, very much.
Okay, thank you. It's been a pleasure.